There are so many things going on in the world right now that it's hard to keep up. Here's my best effort to provide this for you in 10 to 15 minutes. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor. I try to provide context for the war in Ukraine and things that affect Ukraine. Generally, this is 3 big stories. Today, it's 12. That's how much is going on. If you're not familiar with me, please consider subscribing. So let's start here with this. So this is Russia's Reading Russia, and it's done by Steve Rosenberg and the BBC. I want you to listen to a minute or two of this to start to see how the Russians are viewing what Trump has done by reversing course on the ceasefire, kind of like you have to have the ceasefire and then talks. Trump reversed course on that, and this is what the Russians are saying.
The top story in today's Russian papers is Vladimir Putin's late-night statement in the Kremlin, Saturday into Sunday, and his offer of direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul this Thursday. The front page of Nezavisaya Gazeta, that's the back of my head, Putin's face, and a cautious headline. Russia and Ukraine are moving towards Istanbul talks take 2, but dialogue between Moscow and Kiev may fall through over the question of a ceasefire. Moscow is saying talks first, possible ceasefire later.
And the Ukrainians are saying exactly the opposite. Let's have a ceasefire by today, and then we'll have our talks.
President Zelenskyy and European leaders are demanding a 30-day ceasefire first, and then talks, and threatening new sanctions against Russia if it doesn't agree. The general conclusion of the pro-Kremlin press is that with his proposal, President Putin has outplayed Ukraine and Europe. And so you get comments like this in Komsomolskaya Pravda. Russia's president has shown Zelenskyy how to outplay your opponent. Izvestia, Vladimir Putin has played another move like a chess grandmaster in the diplomatic confrontation over the Ukraine peace process. His proposal to begin talks immediately in Istanbul with no preconditions pulls the rug from under the Kiev regime and its sponsors who are trying to eviscerate the peace process, says Vice Rector of the Diplomatic Academy, Oleg Karpovich.
Okay, and so this has really been a back and forth, right? And this video was Putin got played again, then reversal after reversal because Trump actually kind of went along with it. And then we see my last video was Zelensky's strategies leaves Putin nowhere to run because he boxed him into a corner, said, I'll be there Thursday. Okay, let's keep listening to just another 30 seconds or so of this.
It's clear that the idea being pushed by Kiev of a 30-day ceasefire is a trap that will allow Ukraine to rearm and strengthen its position ahead of a new round of hostilities. Moskovsky Komsomol.
As if the Russians aren't going to do the same thing, even if there was a ceasefire. The Russians would be like, you know what? There's a ceasefire. We can't arm. We can't train. Yeah.
A dangerous tunnel under the Kremlin has been made safe. In politics, it's very important to seize and keep the initiative and force your opponent to play by your rules. Kiev and Europe tried to do this. In tandem, they set Moscow an ultimatum to which they thought Putin could only say no.
But then Zelenskyy said yes. And so when this happened, it changed things yet again. Okay, so that's where we are with the negotiations. You can watch this video if you want to see more about that. Meanwhile, Pakistan and India are both declaring victory in a recent flare-up of violence. It lasted for a couple of weeks. And Trump was, saying the U.S. mediated and it's all over now. If only it was so easy in Ukraine. But both sides are declaring victory. Fine, let each side declare victory and we'll have peace. Okay, meanwhile, Russia confirmed to be the culprit behind the 2024 destructions of a Polish shopping mall. This just came out today. So Poland closes Russian consulate general in Krakow as a retaliatory measure. This is related to Russian sabotage last year. Yesterday it was revealed that the arson attack on Warsaw's largest shopping center was organized by Russian intelligence services. So this hybrid warfare on a NATO state. All the other Russian consulates in Europe are remaining open. They do not want to deprive them of the opportunity to carry out similar terrorist attacks in other countries. Yeah, it appears that way. As punishment for Russia's, this is Jay in Kyiv saying, and this is why Russia will continue expanding its tea all over Europe. As punishment for Russia's burning a shopping mall in Warsaw, Poland, it closes its Russian consulate in Krakow. Okay, so Putin's happy to make that trade all day long, says Jay. This is commentary, but yeah, you know what? Unless you really give it to them in a meaningful way, do something about it, it continues. Every day, we repel cyber attacks and report instances of disinformation and impersonation of election candidates to various platforms, says the Polish deputy prime minister. Wow. Okay. So this hybrid warfare is going to keep going unless it's stopped. Now, what's going on with the EU? The EU has reached a preliminary agreement to approve its 17th package of sanctions against Russia on May 20th. The final approval is expected at the EU Foreign Affairs Council. So they're working toward that end, as are the Germans independently. The EU will spend $900 million in the coming weeks of frozen Russian assets for profits on weapons and ammunition for Ukraine, another 1 billion euros to boost drone and missile production in Ukraine. So that's happening, and that's a good thing. Meanwhile, Putin is doing the same kind of thing. Russia is ramping up weapons production, especially drones. According to The Economist magazine, satellite images reveal that the Alabuga plant in Tatarstan is also expanding Shahed drone manufacturing. Remember, Alabuga was just hit just a couple weeks ago. So how are they going to pay for it? Well, Vietnam and Russia are agreeing to strengthen cooperation across multiple energy sectors, including oil and gas and nuclear power. Now, when that hits 500% tariffs, that's going to be a real problem because that's what's in the works in the Senate. Anyone who takes Russian oil is going to get hit with that. And there's a lot of manufacturing. Nike, for instance, manufactures primarily in to a large degree in Vietnam. And it's going to be kind of ugly what happens there. Now, I saw this and I thought, well, that's really interesting. Wonder what's going through Xi's mind. Anton Gerashenko posted this for several days now. China's media has been full of footage from the People's Republic of China marching on Moscow's Red Square. This picture is clearly linked with China's and perceived symbolically. You got to wonder, as Xi is watching Chinese marching down the street in front of the Kremlin, what he's thinking. Wouldn't it be weird if, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but wouldn't it be just weird if the Russians were attacked by the Chinese and this kind of thing, and the West had to help the Russians prevent the Chinese from taking, it would be just hard to wrap your mind around. Meanwhile, Germany gives Putin 12 more hours to implement a ceasefire from noon today, and if only this happened under Scholz. Time is running out. There are 12 hours left until the end of the day, and then more sanctions are going to be slapped on Russia. So the Germans are actually picking up the ball and running with it. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy spoke with Pope Leo XIV. It was our first conversation, but already a very warm and truly substantive one. I thanked His Holiness for support of Ukraine, and remember, the Pope talked about that in his first sermon. And all our people, we deeply value his words about the need to achieve a just and lasting peace for our country and the release of prisoners. We also discussed the thousands of Ukrainian children deported by Russia. Ukraine counts on the Vatican's assistance in bringing them home to their families. I informed the Pope about the agreement between Ukraine and our partners that, starting today, a full and unconditional ceasefire for at least 30 days must begin. I also reaffirmed Ukraine's readiness for further negotiations in any format, including direct talks, a position we have repeatedly emphasized. Ukraine wants to end this war. We now await similar steps from Russia. I invited His Holiness to make an apostolic visit to Ukraine. Such a visit would bring real hope to all believers and to all our people. We agreed to stay in contact. So that's good. This Pope looks like he's going to be on the right side of things, not trying to stay in the squishy middle saying, well, we just want peace. No, call the victimizer the victimizer. Okay. Meanwhile, in the United States, we have our own issues. The United States and China have agreed to a 90-day cut in reciprocal tariffs levied on an array of traded goods after weekend talks in Switzerland made progress in narrowing differences between the two countries. That's good, but the reason that I say it, that we have our own issues, is because we keep talking about tariffs for some bizarre reason I can't quite wrap my mind around. When did we Republicans become the tariff guys? Now the Democrats are anti-tariff and Republicans are pro-tariff for some reason. Breaking: U.S. and China agreed to ease a trade war, tariffs slash for 90 days. Well, it's just 90 days. What will happen then? Washington and Beijing will cut mutual tariffs in a 90-day truce. China to slash tariffs on U.S. goods from 125% to 10%, and U.S. to lower tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% to 30%. Okay, well, that's not everything, but that's going very far in the right direction. It's only temporary, at least at this point, but it's certainly going the right direction. The White House says both sides will also set up a framework for further talks following recent negotiations in Geneva as Washington and Beijing agreed to ease tariffs. Now, with that, the market jumped. This was Friday and this is Monday. Friday, and it happened over the weekend. By Monday, yeah, huge jump immediately, 150 points in the S&P 500. So, this is a good thing. Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, is talking about how Trump tariffs are now raising American prices. He's asked about this here.
Much of the higher inflation forecast for this year is due to tariffs, and since the policy path remains the same, are you effectively reading this as a one-time price level shock?
Very, very challenging. So some of it, the answer is clearly some of it. A good part of it is coming from tariffs, but we'll be working, and so will other forecasters, to try to find the best possible way to separate non-tariff inflation from.
So all this tariff talk is just hurting our country, and it's not just hurting us, it's hurting others as well. Europe is collateral damage in a tariff war between the U.S. and China. Chinese exports, in black, have this year begun to flood the EU, top left, and UK, top right. Up here, see this Chinese imports? Unlike what you're seeing in Japan or Australia at the bottom, where it's about the same as it was before. Okay. And that's an existential threat for European manufacturing. If you flood the markets with cheap imports, it could have a bad impact on the country. I get that. Okay. Trump says he'll accept a $400 million Boeing gift from Qatar. Democrats cry foul. I don't understand this one at all. Qatar plans to gift the U.S. a $400 million Boeing 747-8 Flying Palace for presidential use. Trump confirmed that he'll accept it, calling it a transparent deal. I'm not sure how he can accept it. Democrats are outraged, accusing him of violating the Constitution and inviting foreign influence. Trump fired back. Corrupt Democrats want us to pay full price for a free plane. Yeah, but you can't really be accepting that. Here's the DOJ memo approving Trump's Qatari jet, written by Pam Bondi. I mean, it's all there. And then we see Bill Kristol, the original Never Trumper, posting this. He's right. No person holding any office of profit or trust shall, without the consent of Congress, accept any present emolument, office, or title of any kind whatsoever from any king, prince, or foreign state. That's in the Constitution. I don't understand why Republicans aren't just going, what are you doing? You can't do this. Don't do this. Democrats are doing that, but then he just writes it off because they're Democrats and he doesn't listen to the other side. And much of the time, the other side doesn't listen to the other side, right? So, but Republicans, wake up. What's going on? Even Laura Loomer wrote this. I love President Trump. I would take a bullet for him, but I have to call a spade a spade. We cannot accept a $400 million gift from jihadists in suits. The Qataris fund in the same Iranian proxies and Hamas and Hezbollah who have murdered U.S. service members. This is really going to be such a stain on the administration if this is true, and I say that as someone who would take a bullet for Trump, and I'm so disappointed. Laura Loomer, even Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks Laura Loomer's nuts, right? Republicans against trust posted this: when you lose Laura Loomer, right? So this is outrageous, but you just don't hear it. Speaking of Marjorie Taylor Greene, she was in a committee meeting just a couple of days ago, and you need to understand, she's one of the most MAGA types, the most MAGA-ist, MAGA types out there, and she's in this thing, and this was even highlighted on Jimmy Kimmel's program because it was just such a, well, you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment.
Clearly doctored photo. It makes it seem like this guy who's in charge of U.S. fencing was giving the middle finger when, in fact, he was holding up two fingers.
Here displayed behind me is
So you see what he's saying. He's saying that it made it look like this was it was cropped in such a way that it looks like a short, like a YouTube short or something along those lines. So it's game day, and it looks like he's giving the middle finger here, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene's talking, and then she's going to be interrupted.
Post that Mr. Lefelt put up. Mr. Lefelt came in here today saying that this is game day.
One moment, a point of order, please,
You're
Madam Chair.
not.
Madam
okay,
Chair, I have a point of order. The document that you have up behind you is a misrepresentation of the actual post. It appears that you're trying to misrepresent a witness here who you use subpoena powers against.
This is not Miss Stansbury. Miss Stansbury, this is not a point of order.
The actual picture.
Miss Stansbury, you're not recognized. Miss Stansbury.
Yeah, why would you even do that? Like you don't think there's a journalist somewhere who would look that up to double check it? I double checked it just before I put this out here for you, found the actual item in another verifiable source before I showed it to you. How would you think that she can get away with it? It's absolutely nuts. Okay, just a couple last things and we'll be done. Chinese scientists have developed an AI tool that can reconstruct a person's face from their DNA. That's crazy. The system called Deface builds a 3D model based on genetic information. It was trained on data from nearly 10,000 volunteers who provided both DNA samples and 3D facial scans. The average margin of error was just 3.5 millimeters and drops to 2.93 millimeters when age, sex, and weight are taken into account. The technology could be used in medicine and forensics, for example, to recreate a face from a single hair. But researchers also admit that it opens dangerous possibilities such as surveillance and violations of anonymity. And it's also going to radically reduce the number of crime shows and that we currently watch on TV that rely on forensics. It's going to be like when somebody picks up a phone and it's attached to the wall. Everything will be outdated. Okay, one thing that the Trump administration or that the Ukrainians might want to consider, and this is just a joke, but would be, renaming the Gulf of Ukraine or the Black Sea, the Gulf of Ukraine. It's just a joke. I'm not saying to actually, but wouldn't the Russians be annoyed by that? I mean, I know you have other neighbors like the Romanians and Turkey and I get that, but it would just annoy the Russians so much. Anyway, that's all that I have, my friends. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.